Hey, we are live and in action with Eric Newman from Roc Solid Foundation and the newest author to What Hope Looks Like. And I am so
Nice.
excited for you guys to get to meet him today. Thanks for being here, Eric.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I love the energy just from the promo video. I love it. I
Yeah, I
needed
got to
some of this
bring it
energy
in.
in my life today.
It's a Monday, and Mondays can have those vibes sometimes, but I feel like if we consistently show up in the gift and calling that God has us, the energy continues to create momentum in not only our lives, but the lives of millions and many. And you have done that time and time again over the course of your story. And so I'm excited for people to hear that. We've sat at coffee shop together at this point. We've shared a stage together at this point. You've signed my copy of my book, but I've yet to sign my copy of my book for you. And so
I'm
it's just
waiting
a
on it.
fun
I'm
season.
ready.
I know we're in a really fun season, and it's cool that God connected us for such a time as this.
100%. And I'm looking for I have the pen ready for you to sign my copy too. So it's the feeling is mutual. Super exciting time.
Yeah, it really is. So I want to go back to the time where it wasn't so exciting, for those who have yet to hear and meet you and really get ingrained to your heartbeat and how you show up every single day. So we're gonna kind of take you guys back to something somber, and then we'll re-energize you in the mist because we're still here breathing, and so there's purpose in that. And so let's chat
Right.
through it.
Yeah, man. Super. So I guess from the question standpoint of what was somber, really the pain that I have experienced is that my family, I'm a childhood cancer survivor. My life has been riddled with cancer. I'm 32 years cancer free. I keep tabs on my arm. They are hash
I
marks. It's
love that
supposed to look
so
like
much.
a jailhouse
It
tattoo.
does. It
Um,
does. When I first saw it, I
it's
was like,
supposed
oh.
to. It's supposed to because really anytime that you go through some sort of pain in your life, it can either be your prison or it can be used as a platform to love and serve another human being. So, as I was thinking about what best way to be able to remember kind of the pain that I've gone through, that's what I did come up with was just the hash marks on my like I was in some sort of jail cell. So it's fun to tell people it does look like a prison tattoo,
Yeah, well,
but
it's
really
not like the tear stains, right? Like sometimes it's like the
it's
people
no
that
there's
you
no
killed.
teardrops. I don't those are just wrinkle stains from me right now. It's no
I
teardrops
love it.
right
I love it.
now.
That's the babies. The
This
babies. We'll
this
talk to
is
that too.
13 years. This is 13 years of trying to run a nonprofit. So but I'm a childhood cancer survivor and I've beaten the disease for 32 years. I also lost two first cousins to this horrible disease. And I've always believed like if I can beat cancer, there's anything in this world that I can do. And so I've wanted to start businesses. So I've owned a couple of them, sold a couple of them. And then in 2008, I lost my construction company and was at pretty much ground zero, went to Costa Rica for a little bit. And that's where I combined two parts of my life, my cancer journey and my construction knowledge. And we started Roc Solid Foundation in early 2009 to build hope for kids fighting pediatric cancer. And to tell you the truth, when I was in Costa Rica, I wrestled, my family threw away the word cancer. We never talked about it. And in 2009 or 8, when I was in Costa Rica, I really thought I yelled at God. Like I was like, you made a mistake. You kept the wrong person. I'm a nobody. But in that moment, the word cancer came out, but then the word hope also came out. And so, what does hope look like? And really, it's Roc Solid Foundation. 13 years, we've been able to love and serve kids fighting cancer. The biggest program is building play sets for kids all across the United States. We put play sets in their backyard because that's the first thing taken from a child with cancer. And then the other part is we distribute bags all across the U.S. for families on the day that they're diagnosed. We allow the families to stay together with an overnight toiletry bag. So a lot more program
There
into it, but
is.
that's kind of a quick snapshot.
And I think I want to rewind that snapshot just a bit because when I first opened this book, the second part of the title, the subtitle says "Use your pain to fuel your purpose." And my intro story in this book, which was similar to our time in the coffee shop where I got to know you a bit, was that moment where that little person came around the corner after you went to deliver that check. So you're such a good storyteller. I want them to experience that a bit. Share that moment with us.
Sure. I'd just come back from Costa Rica. One of my buddies found out that I was a cancer survivor. So we raised some money for our local children's hospital. And during that time, I went to go present a check. and one of those really big checks, right, that can barely fit in the elevator.
I can't wait to do
So
that. I haven't done that yet. I love it.
it's amazing. The check was so big. It's funny. The graphic designer was like, I couldn't afford the print. All I could afford was the check. So I wrote in a Sharpie, and the check was so big, I kind of had to fold it up to get in the elevator, and it smeared all the ink all over the place. So again, like, but again, this is just part of,
right? It is.
This is the part of kind of my whole story. It's just
Right.
trial and error. But so as I'm sitting there, it was a day that a grocery store chain donated like I think it was like 1.4 million, and my check was for 7,000, which is great. But they allowed the 1.4 million check to go before me, and I was pouting. Right, that's when I threw the smeared check.
Yeah.
But so in my pouting, they didn't even have adult chairs for me. So it was like I sat in one of the little kid chairs, and I'm waiting. And so then finally, this kid comes around the corner. I hear it. I hear this god awful racket. It's like, brrrr. Well, what that noise is an IV pole. And so a kid ran as fast as he could, came around the corner, stopped right in front of me. So attached to him was the IV pole, but attached to the IV pole was the mama bear hanging onto the IV pole. And she asked me what I was doing there, sitting awkwardly in an awkward kid chair. But for the first time in my life, I told that mama bear the story that I'd been given about being a cancer survivor. And from that, yep. Sorry, somebody. Again, I'm in my warehouse and people are popping in and out. So, but
real time.
Hey, man, I told you, trial and error. So as I'm sitting there, this mama bear is talking to me, and I proceeded to tell her about my cancer journey that I'd been given. And Tamra, for the first time in my life, it didn't come out as pain; it came out as purpose. And I told her that I was a cancer survivor. I was 27 at the time, and when she said the words that changed everything for me, she said, "Do you give me and my husband hope that my son will be sitting in your seat one day?" And in that moment, I didn't know exactly what I was supposed to do, but I knew exactly why I was supposed to do it. I was supposed to stand in the gap for parents. When they look at me, they see that there is future hope for their child. And I think that changed everything for me. Again, like what we're going to do, I don't know. We'll figure something out. But in that moment, I heard that word hope. And for the first time, when I spoke about cancer and about the journey I've been on, it didn't come out as pain. It came out as hope.
As you were sharing that, I was thinking through the next time that you saw a little one come running out the door, right? Come running towards you. And it was during that first build of that playset. Will you talk them through like where the idea came from? Because I think a lot of times people have this desire to serve, and they have this desire to do something bigger than themselves, and they have this desire to seek after even perfection. And we get stuck in that seek of perfection versus that seek of progression or that seek of purpose.
Yep.
And I think that's what you did the first time, right? Like I can do this construction company really well, and I can have great success. And it all comes crumbling, and you lose your identity because there is not this title or this tag or this sense of authority in what it is that you're doing. But we know individually, you and I, that there is so much more to identity and purpose and progression, imperfect progression, than I think maybe all of our listeners might know. So talk us through, how did you uncover purpose after that moment? And how did it then establish this nonprofit of Roc Solid?
So I believe if you wait for perfection, you'll never launch, right? And again, like I think you have to have a plan, but waiting for perfection is one of the biggest tragedies of any entrepreneur. That we see a problem, we need to just start, right? Again, you need to have a plan, and over time, I think you become better and better at implementing the plan. And it's a framework. But for me, the idea of play sets came from swearing that I would never build another play set. I was completely broke. I had that encounter with this mama bear, but I had no idea what to do. So my buddy took advantage of me. He's a real estate agent, and he knew that I can build things. He's like, "Hey, I have this play set. Come build it for me." I'm like, "Man, I can build houses, pour concrete. I can do this." So I get there. What he didn't tell me is the place that had been left outside for about a year. He dumped all of the nuts and the bolts into one bucket, And I get there, it's the hottest day in July. And so I bring my dad with me. Why? Because he was free labor. I couldn't afford to pay anybody else.
Right.
So we get there and I start, and I'm like, there's no way I can, all the markings on the playset were wrapped off. It's like going to IKEA without having the instructions come to you, come with the purchase. So
Never
then
works out. Never works out.
it just does not, right? And so that's I believe that God has a sense of humor. And so as I'm starting to try to organize this project, I want to quit. I'm like, it's not worth it. This guy can't give me $1,000 and it wouldn't be worth it. Yeah, I think he agreed to give me like $250. And so I'd already been there 5 hours. We hadn't touched anything. And my dad was like, you can't leave. I'm like, yes, I can. I'm an adult. Watch me quit. Like, you can't. I'm an adult. You're my labor this time, right? So my dad was like, look in the window. I looked in the window and I saw the top of a little girl's eyes and a blonde bun right on the top of her head. And he was like, I'll pay you more. He said, but you can't let that little girl down. So that was 9 hours in. We finally started building this thing. It took about 19 hours. So we came back the next day and it was still hot. And it was at the end of the day, I was irritated, and I looked at my dad and I'm putting the anchor in. I was drilling the anchor in his last anchor. I was like, I will never build another playset until the day I die. Or I will never, like, not even the day I die, right? Like, I'm done. I'm done.
Nope.
And so, but then this little girl bust out the back door. Mind you, she sat there the entire time and watched me. She ate her lunch there. She watched,
Oh my gosh.
busted out of the back door, hugged my leg, handed me a check, and said, thank you for letting me play. I looked at my dad with tears in my eyes, and I was like, I'm supposed to build play sets for kids fighting cancer. And my dad's like, are you kidding me right now? Like, what? Like, and again, I was never really good at school. I put my parents through the ringer. I've always been an entrepreneur all the way since, I think I said this at the conference, like selling blow pops in second grade. Like, I would go to Sam's Club and then mark it up, right? I just wanted to,
Yes.
I wanted the opportunity. But that little girl, but though it made me realize that no one taught that little girl how to play. No one did. But what she yearned for so much was wanting that playset to be built so she could play. And then I realized I took my life experience, and like entrepreneurs, we solve problems. People that run nonprofits, people that do business, we solve problems. And I'm like, kids that get diagnosed with cancer are always on the inside looking out. How do we bring play to them? And how do we make sure not a single child loses out on the ability to play? Let's build them a play set right there in their backyard.
What I got emotional with the first time, and then I got emotional the second time that you're sharing this story, is the play piece is really important to me. And it's super important to me through the word of joy, because I feel like it's stripped from society in so many realms of our being, from a secular perspective. And we know that God the Father is a father of joy just as much as he is a father of humor and play. And I imagined that it was less about the little kid in that moment that was running to you in both of those scenarios, and that it was the reckless pursuit of God that was actually coming to you in human flesh through play, through purpose, to literally come to you and ask the questions and come to you and play again, right? And expectancy as they sat there and waited at the window, looking, just never losing their gaze. It's like the Father, like he never
Right.
loses his gaze. And he's like, I have purpose for you. And it's going to take you really hot, long days to figure it out. And it's going to take you imperfect plans to figure it out. It's going to take you pouring out all the bolts into one place, and it's going to be frustrating. And you're going to say, I will never. And he will say, but I will. And
Correct.
so the
Yep.
baby comes
That's
out
good.
to you and you're like, holy cow, this is it. This is the moment. And I'm still an emotional wreck from the event this past weekend, because I feel like that was that moment for me where I
Yep.
realized, I'm such a passionate person when it comes to blending faith and entrepreneurship, because the mission field is in the backyard building play sets. The mission field is
1000%.
wherever that purpose is for that person. But until they realize that there's something bigger in that dream, and the kingdom is the bigger, And so it's through play and joy that we get to show up to life every day. And now you get to do it, and you have done it for, it's 13 years of Roc Solid. Is
So
that correct?
it's 12 years. It is
Okay.
12 years. I'm again, I try not to focus on the numbers because there
Yeah,
was
of
a time,
course.
and like entrepreneurship, right? Like
Yeah.
you got to fixate on the numbers. Well, like sometimes for me is like I would fixate too much on the numbers and
Yeah.
forget about the name, right? So yes, it is 12 years. But it's not, and Tamara, you know this too. It's not always easy, but it is always worth it. And I think what qualifies me is the burden, right? So that's the part of not the skill set. Yeah. So again, you can teach someone anything, but you can't teach them to care. You can't teach someone, Tamara, what you were able to accomplish with the help of your community. You can't teach that. That's that desire. That's that burden. Now, hear me. Anything's you can learn anything, but it's the burden. It's that passion. It's the stuff that keeps you up at night and wakes you up in the morning that qualifies the leader that is able to turn their pain into passion. Entrepreneur, stay-at-home mom, whatever, you name it, whatever the title that you've been given at this very moment in time. I think that it's there for anyone. We just need to act on it. And it is. It's noticing and understanding those moments that God gives us that then is the catalyst for what he's like, well done, my good and faithful servant. I don't need you to grow a national organization. I need you to be faithful and I need you to pray. Again, it's my prayer is his promise. And I'm praying more than I've ever prayed in my entire life. And I'm seeing his promise come into fulfillment for 12 years and this amazing journey that he has me on, even meeting you, writing a book, meeting all these amazing people. They're my prayers, his promise.
So take me to the point of COVID, right? And so many businesses went under at that point, and so many promises probably seemed completely broken, even through the lens of a Christian who was like, "Why would you do this to me?" Because I know that there are a lot of faith-driven entrepreneurs who lost a lot, but I
Right.
also got to witness a lot of faith-driven entrepreneurs who received a lot during that time, and I feel like you're one of those people. So talk us through that experience and what God did.
So that journey really, it was March 13th, just like I can tell you the date, and it was in March of '08 when I lost everything. I do call it the curbside moment. That again, in construction, I lost everything. I'm on the curb with my hands in my head, like not knowing what to do. And I usually like I can figure some sort of solution out. Well, in March 13th, 2020, got a couple phone calls. My team's in the air. They were flying, and we had to bring them home. And that's the day I think that the NBA shut down. So on the ride home, got a phone call, probably two phone calls within 10 minutes. We had lost about 200,000 worth of funding because people were scared. They were retracting their commitments, which again, hey, listen, I get it. I understand. So that night I couldn't sleep. So I fell asleep because I was out of sheer exhaustion, but I woke up about 2:30 in the morning and then I hit my knees and started praying. And then my wife got up with me and hit her knees and started praying as well. And when I got done praying, I didn't have the solution. I didn't have the answer, but I had the peace. And so I knew that with that, through the prayer, I was able to find the peace. And then I showed up the next day and talked to my team and said, hey, listen, cancer hasn't stopped. Neither will we. And so we started creating scenarios. And I came up with this saying of like, if we, in this situation right now, by a push of a button, how do we deploy hope? We cannot get to our kids right now, but cancer's still there. How do we provide play? So we created Roc Solid on Demand. By a push of a button, we deploy hope throughout the United States. And so we were an expert at building play sets the last 12 years. Corporate America would pay us or to get us to build play sets for them. And then we would then in return accomplish our mission. All that came to a screeching halt. So what we did is we said, okay, how do we fit Roc Solid on a pallet that we can send to these families to do these projects themselves? And that we teach their quarantine 10, the 10 people that they're surrounded with, we teach them to love and serve and to build these play sets. So we did, and that cracked the code for us. There is a difference between growth, right? You can grow, but how do you go from growth to scale? And not for scale's sake, not for just wanting to run a large organization. Because if you're just doing it just for that fact, in my opinion, again, everybody has their own opinions. I wasn't doing it for scale's sake. I was doing it like, hey, listen, these kids are passing away and I'm not able to provide play. That's what kept me up at night and what woke me up in the morning. And so the most that we had ever done in-person builds up to that point was about 100 builds a year before 2020. Last year alone, during the pandemic, we did 400 rods. So we deployed Hope to 400 kids of where I would have usually had to say no. And then we did 100 of the traditional builds. So last year in a pandemic, we did, no, I'm sorry, 400 total. We did 300 and then 100. So in a pandemic, we did 400 play sets. We did more than we had ever done before, but it's because we're married to our mission, not our model. And I think what the pandemic exposed was a lot of people married to their model, and they had to go back and revisit their mission. And so for us, we're deeply ingrained and rooted into build hope no matter what, no matter where, for kids fighting cancer.
This is so good. It reminds me actually on day one, I was sharing at the Ascend and Assist conference that we get often attached to our expectations rather than to committed to the outcome of the expectations. Right. And I think it's very similar. I love that, married to our mission instead of our model. And oftentimes, and I feel you probably will have this experiences too, as you go into the coaching realm even more and more, is that people come to you with this idea and they're attached to the model of how that idea is going to deploy. And then God will wreck it all every single time based on circumstances, based on situations, and based on his sense of humor, which we love so much.
Right.
And so it's so important for us to really stick to the heart of the why and understand that it's so much more than how you do it, but why you do it. That keeps you coming back to the progression. Again, not the perfection, but the progression of the model, because it's going to change. It has to change. Everything's changing around us. If we stay stagnant, the mission dies. And so I think that's probably where a lot of people didn't have that experience of ebb and flow. They were so stagnant, and this is the only way we can survive, and therefore they drowned, versus you were like, okay, there's still a mission to be served. How do we do this in a way that is serving them well and maybe even better? And now you have the better model.
Well, I think too, so naturally, right? Reaction. We react as human beings, but I think reaction leads to regret. I really do. And I've learned that the last 12 years because I've reacted a whole bunch. But I think when we can respond, I think is the way that we can really do. And marrying the mission, not the model, is the easiest and the best way to keep me grounded in our mission and being able to respond accordingly to, like, not what's best for Eric Newman, but what's best for our mission.
Really incredible. So I'm so excited for that growth and so excited for the book that then took root in that experience. When did you actually start writing this book?
About a year and a half ago. So I'm a big time journaler. Again, like you'll never see me without a journal. And I write down a lot of stuff. So I went back and edited my journals. I call it a red line audit. I do it every single year. So I'm probably about 15 journals a year right now. And every year in November, I go back and edit my journals, and then I edit, and then I circle, like, where has God performed miracles? What prayers have come to fruition? What huge changes have I done? So I circle it, and then I type it out. And then I have a group of individuals that have been sending it to, probably for the last 5 or 6 years, all of my hearts and desires and thoughts. And then they would always say, hey, man, have you ever thought about writing a book? Have you ever thought about writing a book? And I'm like, yes, I just don't have time. So I went back to 12 years of journaling and did that step, made an outline, typed 14 chapters, and then I submitted it to my editor, and then the Hatchet project began, right? Like, cha-cha-cha.
Of course, yeah.
So it took me about a year and a half, and it was probably the hardest part for me was the editing side. I don't have much time in my day, so I woke up at 4 a.m. till 6:30 almost every single day of the week, and that's when I did my editing. And then from there, I had a phenomenal team behind me helping promote and push this book and make it to come into fruition.
That is so incredible. Well, I haven't read the whole thing yet, in transparency, but the beginning piece is so impactful. And one of the things that I love so much, which actually reminds me, and I didn't really realize the parallel, for those who are watching, you can see a Polaroid picture on the front that's like taped because it's been broken and ripped in half. It reminds me of the picture that you encourage people to put in the thing that they open every single day, whether it's your planner, whether it's your Bible, whatever that book is that you're currently reading, it's your placeholder. Talk us through what that is for you, what that picture looks like, and also explain to me a bit more about this ripped Polaroid.
So I do. So I have my wife photo right here. So in our team, we call it our wife photo. In any event, any meeting that we go to, if I'm asking for $1,000,000, right? I walk in with my journal and I put my photo right in front of me. And the reason that I put the photo out, that everyone that you work, if you work or join our team, you have to have one, because we have to make decisions based on that photo, not based on me, not based on the P&L report, right? So I've said it a lot, and I mean, we've been blessed, but I'm willing to leverage the bank account for one child. Focus on the one, what you wish you could do for the many. And having that Y photo, I mean, I've slid back some money before because it's not what's best for that beautiful little girl. That little girl's name is Abby. It's not what's best for her. So we have that. And the thing is, too, what it does, it creates a conversation. So I'm in these meetings with CEOs and executives, and like they're talking to me, right? And then you see them catching an eye on that photo. And then finally, it's almost like I push it out so if they see if they want to
Yes.
say anything for it. And then finally, they're like, in front of their whole team, they're like, "What is that photo?" I'm like, well, I'm glad you asked, right? So it creates a talking point, it creates an icebreaker, but we do it to make sure we're making the decisions based on them. And where the photo, the cover of the photo, if you look at 2000, it says 2000 or 1985 on one side was the year I was diagnosed with cancer, and 2009 is the year that Roc Solid Foundation was founded. So two portions of my life ripped apart came back together. And you're right, the symbolism below it.
Symbolism.
So
You
you
got
got
it.
me. Symbol. Yeah, sorry. He wrote a book. I promise you, read the book.
I love it.
But it is. It's like you got to start. You got to know. You got to start with why, because from that why, again, I like to say it like identify the root, understand the fruit. If you can get that part and you have it constantly in your face, it's already constantly in your head. But sometimes in my head, I allow the things that I shouldn't be like really focusing on that really does not help my shareholder, right? A lot of me is inside of there. So keeping the photo right at the front is probably one of the most important things for a leader, in my opinion, to do, is because I'm a visual person. I like to tell stories. I think that I'm okay with it. I like to bring people along with me, but I need to see it, touch it, feel it. And I think that's the best strategy for it.
So, a lot of entrepreneurs listen to this podcast, business owners, faith driven business owners. And my curiosity, because I know when people have an idea, oftentimes, especially from coaching clients for myself, they come and they want to start a nonprofit because it's like this noble thing to do. And it feels like it would be great because they can get grant money and they can have sponsors, and it's easy to have somebody write them a check because it's a write off and all of these things. But we know that there's a lot more to it than that. However, you've been able to kind of create this ability that strips away the difficulties because there's a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of the 501c3 process. The time to do that is even very invasive and expansive. How have
Right.
you broken it down so that more people can do this and more people can do this profitably?
So the way that we broke it down specifically in the book is like it took me about 3 years to really figure out and to put together the bylaws, to form the board of directors, a lot of the not fun stuff. That's the stuff I call it the dip. That's where most people that want to start a business or a nonprofit, because Roc Solid Foundation, I want you to hear me, and you know this about me. We run it. We run Roc Solid Foundation like a Fortune 500 company. The difference is my shareholders are right here. That's why I need to make as much money as possible. So we run Roc Solid Foundation like a Fortune 500 company.
And for those of you
But
watching or listening, not watching, he's showing that picture that we just talked about. And there's
oh, sorry.
a little person. Her name is
Yep.
Abigail.
Abby.
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 And
Yeah.
so do you have to just know that, like, to have a child as a shareholder, what does that mean and how does that work? And so this is where he's taking us into that experience.
Oh, sorry. I see. I get to see your amazing
I
face, so I
know, I
forget
know. I'm
sometimes.
here for you. I
But
got
it
you.
is. It's a fact of like um, really breaking it down. It's a roadmap because I see a lot of, and I've helped a lot of people start their nonprofits, and I've seen a lot of people quit in the dip. And I think that's a huge or not huge sacrifice, tragedy for people that want to take their pain and turn it into their purpose. And so this book just creates a roadmap. I didn't like anything I saw on search engines about how to start a nonprofit, and it took me about 3 years. And so writing this book, I'm like, well, what if there was a one-stop shop? What if, I think, is one of the most powerful questions that any entrepreneur can ask, right? Because it has, what if has fear on it, and then it has the other side, which is potential. So you choose which side you want to live on. And so what if there was a book that would allow someone to get to loving and serving their community a lot faster than what I did? And they don't have to make the same mistakes about creating a logo that's called Roc Solid, right? Which is great, ROC. But then when people Google it, it should be ROCK. Like, it's all these little pitfalls that I found on how to really start the nonprofit. But then also what I have found too is that a lot of development, right? Fundraising is extremely challenging for nonprofits. Even for us now, it's still like, it's that mentality. I'm a professional beggar, and that's okay. I'm not asking for me,
Yeah.
I'm asking for kids fighting
Yeah.
cancer. But the easiest way that I think that for your organization to become profitable, if you want, and use the word profit, I think is extremely important to use in nonprofits. You need to make money. No money, no mission. No money, no mission. I'm going to say it again. No money, no mission. Is to make sure that you bring people into the community. You show people, you see it, touch it, feel it is the best strategy that you can use. Run it like a Fortune 500 organization, but make sure you get the foundational parts of your organization that no one can see. Make sure that you have it built in concrete, not into sand. And there's a lot, and I know I'm not doing this justice for the book, but it's a roadmap, all the way from how to get volunteers, how to raise your first funds, how to set up your board of directors, how not to lose yourself in your pain work, right? Hard work is hard work, how not to lose yourself. And at the end of it, I dealt with the founder syndrome pretty hardcore. And so in the book, it talks about the founder syndrome too. Like, you become less, they become more. Who's they? The community, the kids fighting cancer, our volunteers, our donors, so on and so forth.
So incredibly impactful. And I remember I started a nonprofit when I was in college called Safe Rides. I always say that I was the first Uber developer.
Yep.
And they had Safe Rides had a mirror that we also mimicked too. So really they were, but in my university I was, and it felt nearly impossible. The only reason that it worked was because the people wanted it and needed it. Right. And
Right.
so we think through that when we start any sort of business, but ultimately knowing that the nonprofit piece is people who either can't afford it or need it so desperately that they wouldn't even think to pay for it. Right. Like when
Right.
someone's going through cancer, the thing they're thinking about is medical bills, and they're thinking about surviving, and they're thinking about just keeping that tiny human alive, especially as a child. And so play, that's like not something that they're thinking through at all, I'm sure.
Right.
And so to have it come in as a gift, to have it come in as a community development, as a family bonding experience, there's so many different ways that it can be built, especially with this on-demand experience that you have. I just think that there's the thinking outside of the box of why the nonprofits and why business in general both work, but it's the inner workings that make it nearly impossible.
I think also making sure you have your values in line. I know that I didn't do that for like 2 to 3 years. And one of the main things, again, for Roc Solid, when we hit that rough patch in 2020, May 3rd or March 13th, is I went back to the values. Families first, theirs and ours. So theirs meaning kids fighting cancer, but then ours is our staff and our team. And so again, I want Roc Solid Foundation to be ranked one of the best places to work in the United States. No nonprofits ever held that standard before.
Wow,
But I think
interesting.
just because you work for a nonprofit doesn't mean that you should be broke, that you shouldn't make money. I make money. I will never apologize to be able to afford to take my daughter to dance, to pay for T-ball, right? So again, just because, and this is where my soapbox is like living for significance and success at the same time. It is possible. It is possible. And that was part of the passion behind writing this book, is like, you don't have to be broke. I'm not a poverty gospel guy. You know, I like my sparkling water, right? So like, I like my
Exactly. Come
Starbucks.
on.
Like, I'm a little bougie at times, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
But my heart, I know exactly who my customer is. And I think having your values in line is one of the most important, because values trump opinion all the time. And so people, as you start to grow this
Good.
organization, as you start to just develop some traction behind your idea, either business or nonprofit, you're going to have a lot of opinions coming in. But if you don't have your values rooted, then you're going to go any way that the wind blows. But if you have your values rooted, Well, no, I hear your opinion, but my values trump your opinion every single time. I'm going to love and serve kids fighting cancer. I'm not called to help with the Heart Association right now. Not saying that one day I won't, but right now my values are no, like families first, kids fighting cancer first, and then the staff family, then my family. So it's making sure that you have the values too, I think is extremely important. But you skip over that because you want to get to the mission. You want to get to like the building of the play set. But sometimes you got to separate the hardware before you build the play set. And the values are the hardware that takes a little bit of time to make sure you get it in line, but the prep work, right? The prep work just makes the passion come to life a lot faster.
So talk us through, because as you're talking and you're talking about the profit, right? That piece of it can always also sound, even though you're talking nonprofit, it sounds like you're talking about the church at the same time. Then the church is in that mentality of like, hey, you're a volunteer and you're a volunteer and you're a volunteer and you're a volunteer. And now you're exhausted in the church. You hate the church and you don't come back to the church
Right.
because you were never actually seen, known, or loved for the value that you provided. And it's not to say that they have to get paid, but I think that there is a critical part for the time investment that goes into these spaces and these places. And there's not that component of exchange for value. Talk us through like valuation and how you choose to pay your customers, or not pay your customers, pay your employees, yourself, when you were kind of delineating what you were making versus what you were paying out.
Yep. So one of our customers, so Roc Solid has 4 customers. It's the families first, it's the donors, it's the volunteers, and we just added our 4th pillar. Our staff is a customer, and we treat everyone like $1 million donor. And that's one of the things that I truly, truly, truly believe in. I've been secret shopped by multimillionaires before, right? They drive a piece of junk Honda to our projects, and they want to make sure that we're treating everyone right. So again, like this will tie into the church part, I promise you, or the evaluation. And that was a very good question. And I love these types of questions. So I'm trying to make sure I'm very specific.
I love it.
But first and foremost, I think a staff, if you're listening to this and you have a staff of 1 or you have a staff of 15, looking at your staff as a customer changed everything for me. Because again, I treat people how you want to be treated, right? We can go through scripture and talk about all that. But then the evaluation of when and how much to get paid. For example, Roc Solid, I worked for free for the organization for 4 years. With having cancer, they told me that the likelihood of me having kids is slim to none. So I promised my wife that that my if we ever had kids, right? I thought I was on a long leash, right? But I promised my wife if we ever have kids, their daddy will not be born into an unemployed household. Like daddy would work, daddy's gonna help try to provide. So little did I know that my wife had circled it, and she was praying by faith that we would have kids, right? And again, I was praying for it, but I thought we were going to adopt. So I was working for free. Well, she busts out and I'm cutting the grass and shows me a pregnancy test, right? And I'm like, I go and buy every single sample of pregnancy tests out. I didn't realize how many pregnancy tests were out there. So I go and buy every single sample. We come back and lo and behold, like we're pregnant. So I go to my board of directors, which I'm a board member, but I've never been chairman. I do believe in total autonomy is not healthy for anybody. I need someone to help keep me in check. And that's why I've always been CEO and I've always had a chairman, not myself. So I go ask to get paid. I asked for $24,000 for the year, and my board said no, we couldn't afford it. So then I said, okay, backing down, right? So I'm like, okay. I said, listen, we're just gonna have to scale it back. Got a couple other job offers on the table, and then my wife and I went back and we prayed, and lo and behold, Tamra, there was a lady that was secret shopping me, and she was on the build site, and she asked if I would like if I would come to her house. I'm like, all right, whatever, that's weird. She invited my wife and I. So we both went, arrive at her compound in Virginia Beach, like had no idea who this lady was. And then we're sitting there, we're having dinner, and she slides me a check of $5,000, but it was made out to Eric Newman. And so in that moment, so hear me too, I'm about to lose my house, and guess how much I owed on my house? Right around $5,000. But I slid the check back because I told her, I said, the only reason you're writing this check is because of what I do for the foundation, not because of Eric Newman. I said, can you please make the check out to the organization, Roc Solid? So then what she does, she knew about the story of my board telling me no. She said, how much did you ask for your salary? I said, 24,000. She said, young man, I've never had anyone slide me a check back. She's like, I'm going to pay your salary for the first year $35,000. Wrote
Come
the check,
on,
sent it to the board,
Jesus.
made out to Roc Solid Foundation. So the reason I'm telling you this, so how do you, we were probably, Roc Solid Foundation was doing about 130,000 a year. There's always going to, so nonprofits have this thing, overhead myth, right? And that's what it is. It's a myth. Now, you need to pay attention to where your income is, and each individual has a different threshold. That's a good thing, right? So again, but for Roc Solid Foundation, we try to stick with the 80-20 rule. And so 80 cents, Tamra, if you give me $1, 80 cents going to go to building a play set, delivering a ready bag, 20 cents will go to the overhead, if you will. But the overhead, depending on how you look at it, is fuel an overhead or is a staff an overhead, right? So each person has their different opinion on this. But I think from the staffing standpoint, you have to be able to lay your head down at night knowing how much you need to take from the organization. And when I say take, I'm saying that very loosely. What's your take home, if you will? But I was losing my house. I was losing a lot of sleep. You name it, I was losing a lot. But people took notice of the grind. And so we just try to stick with the 80-20 rule. And I know that's a huge roundabout answer. But when it comes to the church, I do believe that people get burnt out. And this is what I like to say just from our community. We have thousands of volunteers throughout the United States. But appreciation, thank you, is a currency that you can give without ever running out of becoming bankrupt. Appreciation is a currency that you can give without ever running out of money. And I think we need to be experts at saying thank you. But true, authentic appreciation goes a very long way. And I know that was a long answer, and I'm trying to make sure we keep this
No, it's
conversation
so
going. But
great.
that's
It
another one
really
of my
is.
soapboxes is like,
Yeah.
that was the biggest thing. Getting out of my head and my heart sometimes can be the furthest destination from each other. But once we did that, so I made 35,000 my first year, but then the organization went from 100,000 to 300,000 because I was able to focus 100% of my time.
Right, right. And I think that's a massive piece to it. And as an entrepreneur, especially a startup entrepreneur, you feel that. You feel that weight, you feel that burden, you feel that distraction. It can feel like only thing that you can pay attention to, even though there's so much
Right.
more to the mission and you're still waking up for the why. It doesn't delineate the purpose. But I definitely have felt that, especially as I've brought more team members on and I
Oh yeah.
value them with pay before I value myself because I know what I'm capable of and I know that that burnout component, right, is way less than where theirs would be because it's not fully their why. They can't see where we're going. And so
Right.
they're only there for the next season. They're only there for the next season that I can paint the picture of and they can actually taste and see and feel. And I'm 5, 10, 20 years down the road. And they're like, yeah, no, I don't know what you're looking at. And so
Hey,
that's a
my
component of
wife does that to
vision.
me all the time. She's like,
Yeah.
you talk in past tense. I'm like, well, she's like, has this happened or has it happened in your brain? Because I'm like, well, I had this conversation with Tamra, blah, 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 blah. She's like, has it really happened or did it
Right.
happen right here? And you're laughing because like when you have the gift of vision, right? We have to be careful that
Yeah.
where I think I painted this masterpiece, right? I just threw a bunch of black ink on the wall, but in my head, it's this beautiful masterpiece, and not
Yeah.
everybody sees it the same way. So
Yeah.
Tamara, I'm with you
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So
It's a beautiful, messy, ink blotted gift is what it
the
is.
masterpiece. It is
It
a
is a
masterpiece.
masterpiece.
Yeah.
We are the abstract art understanders, right? Like we get it. We're like,
Yeah.
wow, that's amazing. And
Yep.
so I'm grateful for that. And I'm also really grateful for the symmetry and people like yourself that I am able to sit and have conversations with where I don't feel like I'm talking to a wall and I don't feel like a crazy person because you do get
I'm
it.
with you.
And I know that there's this next step for you as you're sitting in this beautiful experience and watching what God has done over the course of the last few years and evolved the vision, right? And knowing too that you have messages, not just months and years and many journals and not just this book. There's more books to come. I remember when we were sitting there and you were like, "Do you mind if I write that down?" And you told me this thing that I think is such a treasure, and I think more people need to do it, is that you become an expert every quarter at the thing that you're
Right.
interested in. And so talk us through that because I could share it, but it comes better from you.
So I think that as a leader, right? I think honestly, and it's very popular. has talked about leaders are readers, right? They are, which you always have to be developing yourself, especially as an entrepreneur, especially as a business owner, just in general. I believe that you need to get better. It's my job to become better around, and then help everyone around me. So what I found quickly on, like I didn't go to college. I barely graduated high school, and I probably didn't read my first book till I wanted to start a nonprofit, to tell you the truth. Like, so, and I hated all
Right.
those books that I
Yeah,
read.
they're
So
boring. They're so boring.
yeah, ugh, like it was like, this is not keeping my
Yeah,
attention.
Article
So
4 of 17, you will
yeah, 4-69 ABF67.
it's
I'm
the
like, I can't
encyclopedia.
remember where it is at. Like,
It's
I hated
Leviticus, okay,
everything.
people?
It is. So I'm trying to make sure that I stay on point. So the idea of becoming an expert every quarter is because I have found myself in a constant state of being uncomfortable. Meaning like I'm quickly outgrowing the state of where I'm comfortable. And that's a good thing for me. I think it's one of the most dangerous places for me to be, is to become comfortable. Now, hear me. My wife is like, you got to learn how to ride the wave, right? I'm not saying that, but I'm talking about from an educational standpoint as Eric Newman, as a leader, as a CEO, as a founder, as a man of God. And this is how I do my scriptural side too. But from an expert side, become an expert at something once a quarter. The first quarter that I ever tried it in was public speaking. I read anything that I could get my hands on, listened to any podcast in reference to public speaking. The next thing was, this is going to chime a bunch of people: finances, financial buckets, P&L reports, budgets, all this stuff, as it makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up right now. But I needed enough to know how to hold my game in front of some CEOs that are very familiar with that type of stuff. Then I chose one quarter how to articulate vision. The last one, I think, when I was talking to you, was self-awareness. That's the hardest one that I've ever done. Self-awareness. And Rockefeller has a beautiful quote on this of self-awareness. This old owl, and it talks about this old owl's perched up. He was a wise old owl. The more he saw, the more he kept his mouth shut. And in self-awareness, I think the more that I want to become self-aware, the more that I need to understand to keep my mouth shut, to listen with my toes, not with my ears. And if I listen with my toes, it takes a lot longer for Eric Newman to regurgitate and try to add my value into the conversation. But I think that's something once a quarter. I've never been diagnosed with ADD, but like I need some stuff to really focus in. And once a quarter, that's bite-sized nuggets that, as a leader and as an entrepreneur that has a million ideas, I create also something called a parking lot. So when I have an idea and I want to become an expert at something, well, I can't do it right now because action without aim is exhausting. I throw it over into my parking lot.
I love that so much. And I think actually when we were together, you might have just finished self-awareness because I think you were doing culture.
I am. So that's what I'm in now. I
Okay.
can't remember.
Okay.
So culture is what I'm really dissecting right now.
Yeah.
Because culture is this like mystical thing, but I don't think in reality it has to be that way, because people like, they love culture is a hot topic, and you know that.
Yeah. I love it.
What's your
Yeah.
culture?
Yeah.
I love everything about culture, but not many people spend time on it because you can't see it. The return on investment is hard to show, right? So simplicity, it's one of our values at Roc Solid: respect simplicity. How do we take something as complicated as culture, and how do we make it to a guy like me that barely graduated high school can take it, understand it, and implement it into a problem that I'm looking to solve? Because that's what entrepreneurs do. That's what business leaders do. That's what people in general, we're geared to solve problems. So how do we make it simple enough that people can understand it? And that's why I try to do the expertise side. But
Yeah.
I'm definitely
It's
not
so
always an
good.
expert.
Well, it's really great because it does make you more of that whole person, right? I think experts eventually you're like, okay, that's enough from them. Let me move on to the next thing. And you're allowing yourself to evolve. It doesn't mean you never touch that idea again. But it's so great. I love the financial piece because it was less about you and more about who you are going to become, who you were going to be in
Right.
contact with, to say, okay, I need to have some standing firm ground as I go into these difficult conversations. And
Right.
I
Well,
think
look
that,
at Paul. Look at the
yeah,
Apostle Paul.
yeah,
And that's where I looked at it. I'm like, man, he was able to go into any type of, he could
yeah,
stand in
good,
front of like large leaders, or the
yeah,
people that were the drunkards in the pig pen, right? Like I was like,
good.
I have to be able to, for me, like I love and serve kids fighting cancer, but it's where I'm able to stand and show the love of Christ. And so I have to be able to be not an expert, but to hold my ground in any situation that I have found that God has put me in. And I didn't mean to
Yeah.
cut you off, but it is.
No,
It's
it's
like
so
Paul.
good. It's so
It's like
good.
the
It's such a
Apostle
good
Paul,
reference.
the
Yeah,
tent
you're right.
builder or the
Yeah.
preacher. Either one, I'll do
Yeah.
both.
Yeah, they got it. Yeah, it's so true. And I think that's why I love like that concept of pioneer and why Anthony, who was speaking at the conference, that's exactly what he does. Like his dad he's a PK kid, and we can get so stuck on the rules and regulations of business and the rules and regulations of nonprofit. And we forget,
Right.
it's going to circle all the way back to the beginning of our conversation. We forget about the play. And if we're not
Right.
willing to go and play with an idea for a quarter, play with a new book or a new author, or even new religions. Like I am Christian. I love Jesus. I am sold out. But when people are talking to me about energy or frequency or something, and I'm like, why is everybody talking about this? What does that mean? Where does it derive from? What is manifestation? So I went on this journey biblically to understand what
That's
these
good.
other cultures are unpacking, and why is it so intriguing? Oh, it's man-made? No, it's God-made. It's not
Right.
universe, it's God of the universe. And so it takes that extra step of us and that extra desire to answer the questions, right? You said it, I think, well, that it's something about, what's the quote about, ask better questions to get better answers. And I think
Oh
that's
yeah,
what
yeah,
we lack
yeah.
doing.
Yeah. I think too, and again, reminding myself, because I think it's Solomon that said there's nothing new under the sun, right? There is
Yeah.
nothing new.
Yeah. Right.
But the reality is, what I think the job of a leader or an entrepreneur is not to create the wheel, but to put rims on it, right? You
Mm,
don't need to recreate this
it's
thing.
good. It's
You
really
just need to
good.
spruce it up. Take all the Uber, for example, take all
Yeah.
the regulation, take all the rules off the table,
Yeah.
and get people from point A to point B. Same thing with being a nonprofit. Like someone called me the Johnny Cash of nonprofit, and I was actually dressed all black. I'm like, can you say that again? But
I
I
love
want you to
that.
record it. Like
Yeah, it's so good.
but I think nonprofit is an old business. I do.
Yeah.
And I think it
Yeah.
needs to be disturbed because there's so many regulations around, not regulations, not even regulations. There's these made up rules that people have put
Yeah.
into place that aren't really a rule or a law in
Right.
general. But again, Tamara, trying to honor you and my time. Like this is my soapbox. But I think, man, as a leader, as someone listening to this podcast, like you don't have to reinvent the wheel because there is nothing new under the sun. Just put some rims on it and make it you, because cover bands don't change the world. That's the one thing that I have found is they do not change the world. If you want to play someone else's music, that's fine. I am not designed to do that. I'm just not. Like I'll know the music you're listening to, but I'm gonna beat a drum. I'm gonna figure it out. But like
That's such a good
I don't believe that
analogy.
cover bands change the world. And I feel like that God put me in this moment to not just change the world for change sake, but because I see a way to solve a problem that has uniquely been given to me through the eyes of the creator of this world, that is allowing me to help articulate the vision that he's given me. And I'm just going to pray and rely on his promise.
Come on. You guys, Eric Newman, if we were standing in an arena right now, you would stand to your feet for that, because this has been
In
a
my mind, I'm
really,
envisioning that's
yes,
happening.
envision
Come
it,
on.
take
Come on.
it. I'm going to wave my white hanky towards you
Yeah.
right now. It's so incredible, or snap my fingers, depending on what arena we're in. But I really hope that people get this book, What Hope Looks Like, right? By Eric Newman. Use your pain to fuel your purpose. And to know that you can, I think, is what I love the most about your story,
Right.
is that it's nothing prim and proper. It doesn't follow the rules, but it doesn't go outside the lines too much. It's just this
Right.
understanding of following where God says to go, and being aware enough that when those moments, when those little girls, little boys, or little passions come running your way, that it's God's reckless pursuit of who we are, in order for us to recognize that it's time. And I
Yeah.
really believe that it's time for so many incredible faith-driven entrepreneurs to stand up and rise up. And standing in my arena right now, says Blair. I love it. Thanks for being here live, Blair. We love you. Thank you, Eric, again for this incredible time. Where should people connect with you?
Then go to my Instagram at the Newman Experience, and also to buy the book, head over to Amazon. And if you buy the book, and Tamara, you know how important it is, please, please, please leave a review. Please, please, please. And I always used to get aggravated at people that would say that,
Now you
but
know.
now I understand. So yeah, you can go to the Newman Experience on Instagram. That's the best up to date place to find me. And then go to Amazon to purchase the book if you don't mind, but also leave the review.
And if you
Tamra left
have,
one, so you got to
I
leave
did.
one.
I did leave one. I know how it works. I
Yeah.
know how it works. If
Yeah.
you guys have either corporate experiences or team builds or team leading experiences that you need, contact Roc Solid. And if you're looking for an incredible speaker who is not just a speaker, but a storyteller and an entertainer, you are definitely that. So I hope people reach out from a speaking perspective as well, because I will make more stages for you for sure. But I know that you're meant
This is a
to share
stage.
this
I was taught
message.
that
It is a
this is the
stage.
most important stage, and I have taken that nugget,
I
Tamra.
love that.
It is the most. So when I'm at coffee, or if I'm speaking on a stage, like, or if I'm having this conversation with you, this is the stage that God has uniquely designed for me at this moment, and you taught me that. So I do appreciate that. That's a huge nugget,
I'm
huge
so
nugget
glad.
for the takeaway.
I'm so glad, friend. All right, you guys, be blessed, stay fit in faith, and Eric, we will see you again.
See ya. Thank you.